Here we are at the AI Summit New York. I'm happy to have with me Lee Tanenbaum, Global Director of Data and Science and Analytics at Anheuser Busch InBev. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so happy to be here.
So you're doing a big presentation in a little bit. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I'm talking about automating commercial hierarchical models to automate and optimize business investments. So the idea is there's a lot of machine learning innovations that let us leverage data to do a lot of really powerful things, right? We can build recommendation engines, we can track objects and videos, we can build medical applications, but there are still a lot of really huge important problems that are still being solved via human decision makings and guts and PowerPoints. And what I'm doing with my work is essentially leveraging data science, leveraging our modern machine learning tooling and applying them to the problem of automating and optimizing business investments. And that doesn't fit nicely into our paradigms of you have some regression problem where you're trying to predict something and then you want to accurately predict that thing. What you want to do is you want to more efficiently run the business. And so there's a lot of complexities that introduces when you try to compress more efficiently run a business into a data science problem, and you have to sort of stumble through and integrate with a lot of traditional macroeconomics concepts as you get there. And so we're just talking about that integration and how you can do it too.
So where's the benefit do you see? Is it efficiency in supply chain or is it something different?
No, so efficiency in supply chain actually does nicely fit into sort of these traditional supervised learning problems where you really just want to predict things. You want to predict out of stock so you can more efficiently distribute, and you want to optimize your warehouses and your inventory to minimize the probability of running out of products while also minimizing your costs. So commercial investments are very different, right? Commercial investments, the idea is maybe you should increase or decrease price in a region for a product, or maybe you need to do some more marketing for a product, or maybe you need to launch a different type of product within one of your regions because you realize that there's an efficient opportunity there where you're going to drive a lot of incremental sales growth with very little investment on your part. And all the things that we're talking about, these are all economic processes and concepts that we can decide on, but you're never going to get data on what was the efficiencies of your investments. You just do a bunch of different stuff, and there are other external factors in the world as well, and then sales happen, right? Sales just happen, and you're never told, well, your sales went up because of that activity you did. There were a bunch of activities you do, right? What if you had invested more in that activity? How much more would sales have done? You're never going to get this type of nice data that we're used to in our normal data science processes that tell us how the thing that we're looking to predict, how that thing has existed historically. We can only economically model it. So the outcome of my talk, right? The outcome of the tool set that I built for this company and what I'm teaching others to build is how can you take the data that you realistically have running a large business, right? Especially for these massive global organizations. You have all this data, but it's all distributed against your different products in your different regions. How can you leverage all of that intelligently to leverage its scale to make your investments much more efficiently? So how do you tell the business, well, I don't have data on this, but if you invest more in this thing in this region, or if you decrease your price in this region, your sales are going to go up, and it's going to go up very efficiently, where it's a small amount of investment is going to drive a huge amount of sales. And conversely, there's all these other investments that you're making, which you can just shut those down to zero or to some other small nominal value, and your sales aren't going to take a hit. Right? So companies sort of manually try to look at data points and make these decisions, but there's no data science tool set that we learn in school that tells us how do you leverage all of these different granularities of data to either put it into a model that you've learned how to build, or to put it into some automated system where you can improve the way the company runs.
So, so this sounds like supply chain is basically looking at things of the past, if I get this correct, looking at things of the past and simply making it better. What you're talking about is actually looking at things in the future and approaching that in a totally different way. That's like big thinking.
Yeah, so that's the point of the talk. The point of the talk is data scientists can do a lot of cool stuff, and we can feel like we should be running companies, right? Engineers have felt for decades like we should be running companies, but they're not. And the problem is, right, like maybe a little bit subjective, but they're really not ready to run companies, right? They're not ready, like the company can't trust engineers to make their investment decisions for them, but they could, right? The engineers just aren't stepping up to the plate. They're not like stepping up to the responsibility and being ready to handle that responsibility. So running the company, right, making all these future thinking investment decisions and trade-offs, how can you as an engineer upskill yourself and like train your engineering org maybe and get ready to run the company?
Can companies handle this? Because this is pretty new thinking.
So that's a really important question. So right, like that's my biggest question on if I was going to build a system like this, what company do I want to work with, right? It has to be a company that's really like ready for innovation in all of their processes.
This is big innovation. This is not just innovation like we talk about. This is like revolutionary innovation.
Yes, and so this would have never happened in my company without a massive support of senior leadership to go through this change management process of how do we actually leverage this tech to rework our because we're not going to just turn on the system and say, okay, everyone can go home, system's going to run the business now. Of course not, right? But what you want in the short term is to be able to turn on the system and for it to tell senior leaders, right, senior sales or marketing or commercial leaders, tell them how they can redistribute their investments more efficiently, and to also be interpretable for like, granular regional leads to, optimize their investments. And it's an entirely new way of thinking, right? So we've always had regression models, right? Companies have had regression models that try to tell them how to set investments. But it's kind of like a famous space where companies know they can't actually trust those regression models because you might lean into something they tell you to lean into and sales doesn't really go up. And the machine learning, the data science approaches to building those models, they're not holding themselves accountable for reliably driving the business value that they're predicting, right? So if we can hold ourselves accountable to actually driving that business value, and if the business leaders can put in all the work with us to understand and to build this integration of how are we going to redefine our way of working, what are the touch points and how are we going to let machine learning recommend changes, and what does machine learning need to give us that gives us confidence, right? We need measures of how confident is the machine learning system that this change is going to create the outcome that we're looking for. And you're right. That's a massive conversation. That if you keep on asking me questions about it, we can be here all day.
So a year from now, we're sitting here having a conversation. What will we be talking about in a year?
So, a year from now, in my current deployment, this will be much more sophisticated, much more advanced. We will have automated or we will have optimized a lot more parts of the business. And what I'll be really looking at, is how can we scale this out to automate different industries, right? So it's not only for my company, for my business, how can I optimize it, but maybe some people hear my chat and my talk today, and maybe they can recreate a system similar to mine that might be able to automate some of their businesses. But a lot of that is going to be me sort of understanding my business and translating business understanding into macroeconomic priors, because essentially any model in this space you can like, as a mathematician, you can interpret a model as having economic priors. And so you can also interpret economic priors, you can translate those into modeling. But that, that process and the decisions about like, model structures and interactions, that's all sort of being built based on my business, right? Based on our business. And I think the conversation is going to evolve into not how can I build some tool that sort of tells a company this is where you should spend your money and then I call it a day, right? It has to be from the point of view of how can I reliably build something that I can give a company confidence that they can use it, but how can I automate that process so it can apply to all different companies and all different industries?
Well, I look forward to that conversation. Thank you so much.
Fascinating
It was a pleasure.
stuff. Thank you so much.